Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to welcome you to this webinar, which has been necessitated by the Contact Center Association of Zimbabwe as a membership benefit, and also to create awareness around areas of contact center audits and benchmarking. Contact center audits and benchmarking is there just to assess workflows and procedures and guidelines in the contact center. And we've seen that most of our members have taken a keen interest in this regard, but not knowing exactly what it means in the procedures and the cost around it. So we have got two of our CX gurus. They've done extensive work in terms of the contact center audits and benchmarking. So we're going to have Debby and Rod taking us through. So at this moment, I'd like to hand over the chair to Rod so that we can start.
Thank you for that introduction, Timothy. And once again, it's a great pleasure to be here hosting this particular session today. And by way of introductions, I'm going to first ask my colleague, Debby, just to give a little bit of background, your years in the contact center industry, your areas of specific passion and expertise, and then we'll get into the webinar. Debby.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Yes, Debby Webster. I have a company called Triskel Consulting. I've been consulting on contact centers as an individual for the last 12 years, but I've been in customer service now for getting on to 30. My passions are auditing and benchmarking, of course. That's why I'm here. But in particular, I have a passion for training, for quality. Quality is vital in my life. Making sure we have the foundations, job descriptions, business processes, all of those good things that make a contact center a really great organization.
Thank you for that, Debby. And by way of introduction, I've been in call centers and contact centers for, it'll date me, 45 years now. I've done 15 trips to Zimbabwe, so very much home from home for me, and looking forward to being there next week. I also do consulting, business development. I concentrate a lot in the BPO sector. And Debby and I, over the last 10 years, have worked and developed this, what we call the Assess360 methodology, which is really what we wanted to talk to the delegates here today about. Just by way of a bit of housekeeping, once again, please use the chat line or the Q&A line. We'll be watching those very carefully during the next 50 minutes or so. I will also be editing this recording of the session and put that up onto YouTube, and I'll send that link through to the CCAZ for distribution to the members. So without further ado, if I may share screen, and let's go. If Debby and Tim, can you check that you can see the screen?
Yes, we can.
You can. Right. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll just do the first little bit on this one, and which is a slide that if you've been on my master classes, you'll know all about it. I say what keeps executives awake at night, what keeps managers awake at night. If we're in the call center, contact center industry, what keeps you awake at night? And these are the key factors that we think are the fundamentals of any contact center. Reduce your cost of operations, increase efficiencies, increase revenues, reduce risk, and increase customer satisfaction. So in other words, we also need to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. Debby, you've been doing this for how many years now? 30 years almost. What's your take on those 5 drivers?
Okay, for me, of course, the most critical is increasing customer satisfaction, because that leads to your increasing revenues, increasing your efficiencies, reducing your, so that is your catalyst. So for me, that's the key.
Excellent. And as we know, we're on headcount freeze, IT spend freeze, budget freeze all over the world, all over the place. But as managers of our operations, we cannot compromise on quality and compliance. So we have to do a lot more with a lot less. And Tim, I think you'll agree in your experience in working with your members up in Zimbabwe, these are the problems, these are the challenges. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would definitely agree, Rod. And I think the idea for our local market is to sort of like turn these contact centers into money-making machines. So once we realize that we are very efficient, we increase the revenues, look at it, it's quite easier for us to get approvals from above to implement whatever system we want to implement when it comes to contact centers.
Very good point. So we're going to move contact centers from cost centers to profit centers and make that known in the boardroom, I think. So, why is it absolutely essential, in our opinion, as consultants, to assess and audit call centers? And I'll do the first 5, then I'm going to ask Debbie to do the next 5, because they're 10 very, very good reasons. So, enhance customer experience. If we know what's going on in a call center, we know then what interventions we need to rectify any faults and to optimize opportunities. Driving efficiencies. Sadly, many contact centers are very inefficient in the way they operate day to day. So in doing an assessment, we will find ways to increase those efficiencies. Compliance, particularly if you're in the financial services sector or any regulated environment, compliance and risk mitigation is a really, really important issue. So once again, an assessment will probe into that space. Once again, we find that once we've done the first assessment and audit, it drives ongoing improvement of the operation. We'll show you shortly the method that we use there. Employee engagement. In fact, I wrote a blog this very morning on LinkedIn around employee engagement. And basically what it's saying is that if we have totally dedicated, enthusiastic employees who are committed to delivering service, that drives your customer experience and that drives the bottom line. Debbie, would you pick up on the other good reasons?
Yes, of course. Okay. And we mentioned this earlier when we were talking about what keeps your executives awake at night. Employee engagement. We need to boost the morale and increase that job satisfaction. And the only way to do that is to address our staff concerns. And of course, that is part of what we will get out of doing an assessment. Cost saving, again, get rid of the unnecessary expenditure. We need to use those resources carefully. Next one. Customer loyalty and retention. Again, this goes back to your customer satisfaction. We have to continuously deliver that high quality service, that extraordinary service that people really are coming to expect. Strategic alignment, critical. This makes sure that the organization, the contact center, everybody's on the same line to make sure that we are going in the same direction. Very, very important. And of course, innovative technologies. Make sure you have assessed the readiness for adopting new technologies before you just jump in. AI sounds good, but we have seen so many mistakes being made by people who just go in thinking AI is going to resolve all their issues. So again, just be aware of that.
And so that's welcome to our world of Assess360. And we believe it's the fast track to achieving that world-class customer service and excellence. Timothy, before we delve into the more details on Assess360, any comments from your side about the necessity for auditing?
I think basically the necessity is I think Zimbabwe is on the road to having the world-class contact centers in terms of setup, and then the hardware, the ambience in the contact centers. But then at the end of the day, what the questions that we are constantly asked is how many contact centers how many contact center agents should be there against the volume of calls. So at times you tend to have too many contact center agents, or you tend to have too less. In the process, then efficiency goes down. So I think the basics for assessment is to assess how much human resource we are investing in these contact centers, so that we can manage whatever volume of calls we're having.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Tim. So, we talk about glibbery, we talk about world-class contact centers, but, what is a world-class contact center? We've got a few slides here which will spell it out. A world-class contact center, and we'll take you deeper into the journey, is a combination of operational maturity and strategic alignment. And we'll break that down into further details. So all contact centers, no matter how much money it has been thrown at it, they all start as foundational. They've got the basics. And even if you spend millions on technology, for example, it's still a foundational call center because it hasn't matured. It's like a teenager that we all know. If we've had teenagers, if we've had children, we know what it's about. It then becomes what we call a fundamental contact center. It then moves into a phase that we call the developing phase. A mature contact center runs efficiently, runs effectively, runs profitably, has cost control, meets all the compliance criteria. It's actually a very, very good contact center. A world-class contact center takes it one level higher. This is really the benchmark for excellence. So our job in life is to find out where is your call center on this diagonal, and then to plot the way forward into its next level. So what does it take to be a world-class contact center? There are three fundamentals. I'm going to ask Debbie just now to address the first one, which is strategic alignment. I'll then talk about compliance and standards, and then we'll talk about benchmarking and how we go about it. So the first, of course, is that strategic alignment. Debbie, why don't you pick up on that, please?
Absolutely. And we mentioned it earlier in those 10 points. So your contact center has to be fully aligned with the organization's core business. It has to align with the strategy, the operations. If you do not have alignment, you're going to have your contact center going one way, thinking they're doing a really great job, but it's not aligning with where the business sees where it has to go or wants to go from a point of view of what is it that we want to achieve and how are we going to get there. So your strategic alignment is absolutely critical.
Excellent. Thanks on that one. So the second one is standards. Now, we talk about standards a lot because standards, KPIs, SLAs, all of these components are what drives a contact center. So we say that a world-class contact center monitors and meets with specific, clearly defined standards. We break that down into the necessity to achieve better than 85% of standards defined by the organization. Now, in the auditing and assessing process, we assist organizations to define those standards for themselves. Which KPIs actually add value to the business, what SLAs add value. And in many cases, believe it or not, people are measuring KPIs and reporting on it, which have very little bearing on the operational efficiencies. We then need to look at standards. Those are defined by customer expectations, internal customers as well as external customers. And then by specific industries. If you're in the financial services industry, there are very specific compliance requirements or standards or KPIs. So we would need to look at those very, very carefully. Just a note on standards. There are many, many standards available. And as advisors to our clients here, we look at South African national standards. They were developed in 2008, and these were actually the very first country in the world to have national gazetted standards for the operation of contact centers. There are about 2,500 standards, I might add, in that set. We have the ISO international standards, the 18295 standards, and then we've compiled 480 contact center KPIs and standards that we use when we're working with our clients. And if you're interested, we have a little free ebook on KPIs for your contact centers. Debbie, do you want to mention anything about standards and your experience with operating within contact centers around standards?
I think a lot of people don't understand the standards and they don't understand the KPIs, exactly what you were mentioning earlier, Rod. And that's why it's critical to make sure that we align with what is best practice. And it doesn't necessarily mean as an organization, if you're not in financial services, it doesn't mean you have to align with the ISO, but there are parts of it that really can guide you and can help you and actually set you in the right direction. So for me, your standards, your KPIs, that all particularly hones in on the quality component of a contact center, making sure that we're doing things correctly.
Excellent. Timothy, there's a question coming from Elton. Would you like to respond to that?
You're saying, can we please go back to the previous slide? Elton, which slide do you want us to go back to?
I can go back. Is it that one?
Isn't the one with the stages? I don't know. Elton?
The stages, are you talking about the world-class?
That one there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, in the interests of time, Elton, if you don't mind, we'll come back to that one, but hold that question and we'll just forge on, and we'll open it up for further discussion in a second. So there we go. We're back to standards. So they're the standards, and there's the download. You can just go to the website and download it. And then, of course, benchmarking. You know, the adage that is, we don't know what we don't know. So an assessment and audit gives us a baseline, and it allows us to measure ourselves, against our local competitors, and against our international competitors. So very important that we know exactly where we are. We also have a set of key performance indicators, or KPIs, that are generally accepted throughout the world as the best practice for the running of contact centers. So an assessment or audit, we will look for at least an 85% compliance. But bear in mind that when we do these assessments first time round, in many cases, contact centers fall way short of some of these guidelines. But that's the good news, because it gives us the basis on which to build, to which to find the quick wins, in which to refine and to go to the next level. Any comment on benchmarking, Debbie?
No, but for me, except the big thing is your benchmarking should be done on at least an annual basis. It is absolutely critical that you keep on aligning yourself with your local competitors, other contact centers, not necessarily competitors, and if you can, regional and international contact centers as well, to try and find out where do you fit in this whole mix.
And I think the other point there, and I'm going to ask Tim's opinion about it as well, because the rate of change in our industry is just exponential. You know, when I started out in the industry 40 years ago, technology changes happened over 5-year periods. Now with AI, we're having innovations happening literally overnight. Tim, I think you were at IT AI workshop yesterday, were you not? Can you speak about the advancement in technology in contact centers?
Yes, I think we as an association, the reason why we then reach out to the region, to guys that were there yesterday with tech guys from India, sort of like giving us a sneak peek on what's going on. We are a bit behind in terms of technology, but then it's only when we have these assessments and benchmarking that we can know exactly how far behind we are. Because the idea is we need to have some form of standard, and as a country, we don't have standards that we can measure against ourselves. But then it would be better for us to benchmark ourselves against regional or international standards. Those are something that we can look up to, since we don't have anything in place now. But I think with time, we'll probably just draft out something, and we'll have our own standard that will assess our own contact centers. But I think for now, it's best for us to have these international standards coming in, so at least we can be aligned with others, as since we're still a bit far behind.
Excellent. No, I think that's something we can certainly start working together with the CCAZ and establish some local and regional standards, definitely. So once again, you know, the auditing process will tell us where your contact center is on this diagonal. A lot of other reports come out of it, by department, by division, by, you know, whether it's the technology or the human capital side of things. So we extract a lot of information, and then our report backs allow you to have basically the blueprints for developing your contact center and taking it up that development curve on a systematic and a sustainable basis. It also will give you the ability to approach your senior executives with a rational plan, backed by audited data, and also projections for improvement and how that will manifest. So we'll do these, just give you a high level of how we go about it. So we're looking, when we do these assessments, and we'll drill down a little later and show you the actual methodology, we look at that corporate strategy fit. We look at the customer relationship management policies, strategies, systems, etc. We also look very importantly, as Debbie mentioned earlier, the health and safety and staff well-being, the facilities on the site, the physical environment, lighting, seating, desking, etc., etc. We drill down into the organization of the contact centers, recruiting, career development, training. We obviously look at operational metrics. So these are the primary sections of the assessment or the audit that we work with. And then Debbie will pick up on this one, what we look to monitor and measure. Debbie?
Yes. So we look at the KPIs, and we mentioned about the fact that, there's a document with 450 various KPIs. We look at what's best suited to your environment, what's your organization. The same with your SLAs. You have to measure something that is, first of all, your KPIs must be measurable. Secondly, they must be achievable. You don't want to bring in something that you've set a level that's so high that your people can't meet it, and that's going to reduce your motivation. So your KPIs, your SLAs, those are critical. We look at your compliance. If you are contractual, we look at that. Your standards and your financials, of course, just follow on. But for me, the monitoring and measuring starts with your KPIs, your SLAs, and of course your compliance, because that's the fundamental part of what it is we're trying to give you. And of course, we give it to you in various stages. For example, we'll give you quick wins, then we'll give you more medium term, and then we'll give you longer term fixes. So that's what we do with the monitoring and measuring. And as Rod said, you'll see more of that in the next slides.
So when we embark on this exercise, there are about 650, depending on the site. There could be more actual checkpoints that we engage with the organization. Well, I think I must also add here, before we do anything, we sign some very strict non-disclosure agreements. So because there's obviously a lot of confidential information, but these are the probes. We do it by way of interviews with call center manager, executives, other people that we agree upfront with the team who we're going to talk to. Some of those are done face to face. Nowadays, we're doing a lot of them by virtual connection using Zoom or Teams. We sometimes run workshops with small groups to discuss that. We ask for, and it's vital that we get a lot of the documentation and reports. We do physical site inspections. As I said, much of it is virtual, but our colleagues up in Harare through the CCAZ, who are very well experienced in these matters, do a lot of the groundwork for us and the physical engagement. So that said, I'm going to ask Debbie to talk about, this is something we've spent nearly 20 years developing. These are just a few pages from, I think it's close to about 70 pages in total, this questionnaire methodology. Now, all of this is done in... Yes, Timothy.
There's a question there. Sorry to interject. From an anonymous attendee. Do you also look at the ideal job grading in the contact center when you're doing these audits?
What a lovely question. And I'm going to throw that to our specialist here, which is Debby, who does the human capital assessments and training as well. Debby, why don't you answer that question for us, please?
Absolutely. So when we talk about grading, of course, every country has different grading structures. We have alignments. So when we do the assessment, and in particular, when I do job descriptions, I look at what is it that this particular position is calling for, and then we bring that into alignment with whatever country standards they are, because they are different. So our matric, for example, it might be slightly different in South Africa to your O-level or M-level that you have in Zimbabwe. Or in the UK. So we do align those grades according to the job descriptions when we do the assessment. So that's why it's really important that we get sight of the job descriptions That's part of the documentation so that I can do an assessment on those job descriptions to see, do we have the right KPIs? Do we have the right grading? Do we have the right fit of person? Because we need to know what are the characteristics that this person has to have in order to do this job. Don't put a square peg in a round hole kind of environment.
And I
Does
think
that
if I
answer
might
your-
jump in there as well,
Of course.
Debbie, is that
Yes.
Debbie and I have developed over the years not only job descriptions, but what we call competency profiles. Some of the, like an call center team leader or supervisor, competency profile runs about 15 pages of line items of the competencies that we would like to see. We can measure that against the incumbents, and those give us skills gaps, which read into training and coaching and mentoring, which is way beyond auditing. That's into the consulting services. Debbie, back to our questionnaire that we've spent so many years building. And
Yes, so our questionnaire is very, very thorough, and we do like to do it together with identified personnel within the organization. So, for example, on the HR side, we would have HR representation, we would have contact center representation to actually complete the documentation and fill it in accurately. The big thing is this is not an exercise to see how to sort of fudge the situation to show that you're really good. This is an exercise to say, what can we do to make it better? Remember, everything we do in an assessment is, what are the key issues that we find? Is it a quick win? Can we fix it now? And of course, that's critical in the process. We do the same with the IT side. We do the same with all the different sections that we have. We do one-on-one interviews, as Rod mentioned. That's a representative portion of how many staff you have, depending on the various job descriptions. Those are normally, they run about 15 minutes, where I can actually get an idea of who am I talking to, what level are they, what are their aspirations, where are they perhaps misfits or areas that they're perhaps not happy with, etc. So the assessment is incredibly thorough, and it is a lengthy process. This is not a do it in a day, do it in a week.
Well, I think this is something we'll share with you in a few moments, the actual process that we follow to get to the outcomes of this. And so once again, this is the methodology, and bear in mind, this is a template. It's a draft format. And as you can see, we break it down into stages. The first stage is discovery, is really understanding how does the operation work, what are the strategies, what do the executives expect, what are the operational realities. So in this stage, this is where we use the questionnaire or a section of the questionnaire and some of the interviews. And this would be the ideal process, by the way. So as you can see, this is over a 2-month period. We start working in each of these sections, and we do a milestone where we do a feedback to the executive team of what we've initially found in the process. Some of these run concurrently. There's the human capital assessment, where Debbie constructs some surveys. We go out to the staff in some cases for written surveys, feedback forms, as well as interviews. I tend to handle the technology assessment, where we look at the appropriateness of the technology for the operation. Our colleagues in Harare will spend time visiting, and hopefully we'll have some nice tea and donuts for them as well when they come to visit and spend the day with you on the site. They'll be looking, once again, we give them templates to follow and questionnaires. They'll be looking at all the ergonomics, the lighting, the canteen facilities, the toilet facilities, in other words, the total working environment. And then finally, at the end of that, we pull all this information together and we present a detailed report back to the executives, to the operations team. And this will identify problems that we've seen, solutions that we would recommend, a lot of quick wins. We also have a lot of templates and documents to assist as well. Debbie, is there anything you'd like to say about the process and this particular model?
again, just for people to understand, it is a very interactive process. This is not us telling you. This is very much you giving us input into your pain points, where things you think are going well, so that we can actually work with you while it is an assessment or audit to find out exactly what's wrong. It's also let's get you up to speed. Let's take you from whichever level, whether it be foundational through to mature to world class. But this is the starting point of getting you really set up from a strong foundation, because we do find a lot of contact centers come in without those basic foundations, your job descriptions, your policies, your procedures, your business processes. That's all critical in a business so that everybody's aligned.
Timothy, your team will be very active in delivering the some of the components of this, particularly the on-site activities. Would you speak to that in your relationship as an association with your members?
Okay, I think the reason why we have sort of facilitated these audits is because we need to curb the cost component. Since you are a paid member of the association, there are obviously some things that we will waiver that are in this project plan. So at least it becomes affordable to everyone. In terms of us being on the ground, that means we want to do a thorough assessment. So us working on the ground in collaboration with whatever online assessments that Debby and Rod will be doing, I think we'll come up with something that will make sense to the organization, and we'll speak to the executives, and it becomes easier to carry on doing these. Like Debby said earlier, that we need to do them annually. If there's need, we might do them like twice a year, but then it depends on the results that we're getting and how effective these audits are.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Tim. So people say, how much is this going to cost? Well, the bottom line is every contact center is different. We'll have different requirements, but just to have a look at some of the components, and I'll show you how we go about developing a cost model. So the scope of the assessment, we've got various methodologies, and every contact center is different. So sometimes if there's a very small operation, obviously it's going to be quick, it's going to be easy to do, and therefore the scope of the assessment is a lot easier to handle. The size and the complexity, we've assessed call centers with 1,000 agents. And so obviously that's a highly complex environment with team leaders, supervisors, quality assurance teams, workforce management teams, etc. It becomes a lot more complex and therefore more expensive, obviously. Data volume and sources of information. If there's good reporting in place, it's easy for us to do. Sometimes in some contact centers, it's not easy to get the information, so we have to spend a lot more time extracting it. Customization of the audit itself is, what does the management team want? What does the executive team want? The extent of documentation. Some executive teams want copious report backs, lots and lots of documentation, and that of course is time consuming and therefore costly. Travel and on-site requirements. That's why we've doing a lot of it by virtual and Teams and Zoom nowadays, because it cuts down on the high expense that it takes, not only the travel costs of airfares and accommodation, but also the time of traveling, etc. So sometimes some organizations would expect to have us on site, in which case it's going to cost more. Client collaboration. If we work very closely with a good management team supported by the CCAZ team, then it moves a lot faster. We get the information we need. The meetings are held on time. They're attended by the right people. It makes it a lot easier. And then in certain environments, such as financial services, insurance, etc., there's another component where we need to look at the regulatory compliance issues. And in some cases, there's a lot more documentation that needs to be assessed. So what we're basically saying is that before we actually work with the CCAZ to give you a quotation, We do a free virtual scoping meeting where we discuss the implications of your particular site, understanding how big it is, how complex it is or not. And then based on that, we will work out in association with CCAZ, who will contract with you, we'll work out the fixed price. I see, Timothy, you've raised your hand. Why don't you come in here, please?
Yeah, there's a question by Priority Mbao. The question is customer journey mapping part of your scope?
Debby, that's your area of expertise as well.
Okay, yes. Customer journey mapping, we can include it as part of the scope. When I say we can include it, so it's not part of assessing. We will assess, do you have your customer journey maps? And as part of the process thereafter, we can actually assist with developing your customer journey maps, your as is, your to be, looking at what's the best practice, how are you going to achieve in a better way. So we can have that as an add-on.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Debby, that you raised, and Priority, thanks for that question. So I think to understand, when we talk about documentation, when we start the process, we ask for a lot of documentation. As Debby said, processes. Show us your processes, show us your existing customer journey maps, if they exist at all. And then we assess them. That's our job as assessors. And we'll tell you whether they are good, whether they're bad, or they're ugly. And that's where our recommendations form part of the feedback, is to say, we recommend, for example, that we redesign processes, that we redesign customer journey maps. And we have methodologies and processes to do just that. Timothy, would you like to talk about that component?
Okay. I wanted to speak to the overall costing of the process. Like we said, you know what, we are trying to. This is something new already. If I to look at our local market, it's as hard as it is to create a customer experience function in an organization. You know, it was never deemed as necessary, but through our efforts as the Contact Center of Zimbabwe and through the people that our key account managers, we've managed to make inroads in terms of having a customer experience department. Now having a customer experience department, then asking for a contact center, a high value one. Then in the process of us getting a contact center, now we need to do this audit. So in terms of the costing, I think Rod and Debby, I think we'll try and tailor make the costings to whatever organization, whatever situation that we have. But at least we've got a starting point. Once they see the need for these audits, I think they'll become part of the budget every year. But we have to have an entry point. In as much as we try to introduce contact centers in the organization, when we started back in 2010, there were a few contact centers. Now we've got over 40 contact centers, and we've got about 20,000 people working in contact centers. So I think it's how we approach this, how we do the inception process, and from there I think it will become a household need for every organization.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Timothy. And this really is where we throw it open to questions, Q&A. We've had some really good questions come in. I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A there and on the chat. Are there any other questions, or anybody like to come in and add to this discussion? I see we have one of our colleagues in the room, Beverly Dixon. Beverly, can I bring you in for a quick commentary? Are you there? Beverly, can you unmute for a second? There we go. For those in the room with us, Beverly is one of our consultants in our association. Also many years in contact centers and with a specific experience in the insurance industry. Beverly, won't you comment on what you've just seen, please?
Yes, I think this type of assessment is vital. Often when you go into call centers, from my experience, you see that people are measuring the wrong stuff, or they just have absolutely no idea what the benchmark should be. I've recently done some work with a big insurer here in South Africa, and they don't even know what the basics of the benchmarking for their call center is. So these type of assessments, I think, are really critical to do. It's sharing knowledge with you as well and helping you then get to those different levels that Rod was showing you earlier on. And particularly as Rod was alluding to earlier on, in the financial services sector, as you know, there is strict regulation. So quite important to make sure that you are compliant and have some experts come in and guide you. Thanks, Rod.
Excellent. Beverly, thanks so much for your contributions. They're greatly valued. And if anybody is really interested in talking to Beverly, it's nearly 30 years in, let's call it probably the largest insurance group in South Africa, but now as a full-time consultant and strategic advisor. So Beverly's a great source of knowledge, information, and guidance to us. I see we have a really nice question from Leonard. Will the process also assist in establishing quality control processes and procedures? I'm going to throw this back to Debby, and we've worked long and hard in many sites looking at quality and quality assurance processes, procedures. And then once you're finished there, I'll also talk very briefly about some of the new technologies that we have to assist us with quality. Debby, over to you.
Great. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, when we did the introductions, quality is one of my passions. I do a lot of quality training. I do a lot of creation of quality scorecards, creation of your processes around your scorecards, scorecard guides, and that's all part of what we do in the assessment, is to say, what have you got? Does it align with the strategy? Because even your QA scorecard and the way you do your QA must align with your strategy. It must align with your compliance, because compliance and QA sit together and they work together. The other thing about QA is that this is where you get to really motivate your staff. QA, we all know, is the big stick to beat up our staff. That's not what it is. And the way we do our QA, the way we approach it, the way we train it, our coaching methodology, our performance management, that's all part of the QA process. So yes, it is very much a part of this whole process of finding out where you can do it better, or you're doing it really well, but we will pick up on that. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Debby, thanks for that. And I think it's just really important for everybody to understand assessment and benchmarking is a discovery of the existing realities. Fixing it and building new and developed processes, systems, etc. That follows afterwards. And that each individual contact center will have a different recipe, if you like. So what we do in the assessment process is identify the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make recommendations. Timothy, you have a comment.
There's a follow-up question by Leonard there. It says, also, will it also give us a benchmark on the sales conversion rate?
Yeah, let's have a look at this one, because once again, we ask for, in the assessment process, we ask for reports, we ask for documentation. So those figures would be provided to us. And we would then also, as part of the process, ask for the aspirations. What are these are the baseline figures. What do you want to achieve? And this is where, depending on the type of organization, we then identify, let's call them global benchmarks, global best practices. Leonard, if you're in the financial services area, I'm not sure of what business you're in there, but if, for example, it's would be an insurance business, the first person I would ask is our colleague Beverly, who's had 25 years of working in the telesales, telemarketing environment in financial services. And we would know very quickly what those benchmarks should be and what those sales conversion rates could be. And then we would say they could be this, but we need to do the following. So once again, assess, create the recipe for success, and then implement it. In quality assurance, I've had the privilege of the last 4 or 5 years working with a company that has developed speech analytics as part of QA. And in fact, they are sponsoring this, called Corby. They're sponsoring this webinar today. This allows us to take all of your calls, 100% of all the calls, and to automatically assess them, identifying keywords and phrases or the absence of keywords and phrases in conversations, and identifying what agents need to do, what they are maybe complying with, what they are not complying with. We'll be able to identify agents that, if it's outbound sales, those that are really achieving excellence, what is it that they are saying, what is it they are not saying. So anyway, speech analytics has become a major part of modern technology-enabled QA. We also have done some recent tests using Zimbabwean English language call recordings that works very, very well with this new technology. Anybody attending the masterclass next week, I do have a section there where we expand on using technology. But if anybody else is interested in seeing how this technology can apply in your operating environment, I'll gladly introduce you to my sponsors. Any other questions? Sales conversion rates, Timothy, anything that you've observed in these discussions?
I think for these audits, I think they will differ from one industry to the other. And since you said before before inception of these connected audits, we'll just ask a lot of questions, so at least we can assess what is it exactly that you need out of this connection audit. It needs I think they differ from one organization to other. Like you said yesterday that you said something about the cloth fitting, the tailor fitting the cloth. We wrote yesterday. So I think it differs. Yeah, it differs from one organization to the other.
Yeah, and that's why the starting point is that initial Zoom discussion. And by the way, we're very happy to sign non-disclosures before we start any process here. And it's that initial discussion to find out what is it you want to achieve as an organization. We would then ask you about the size, the scale, and on the background of that, we would then craft our proposals, which would be very specific to your operation and specific budgets. The expression I use is we'll cut the suit according to the cloth. So if you have a really big budget, then we can do a lot more work. We can do not only the assessment, but we could also then extend it into consulting services and more specific training, coaching, and mentoring. So there's a range of services which we would work with the CCAZ to support you. Timothy, I think there are no more questions. Oh, wait a minute. There's Jeffrey's high exciting news on the AI on quality assurance. Jeffrey's, I'd be delighted to engage with you one-on-one with that. And perhaps even what I'll do, I'll talk to Timothy. Maybe we run like a group demonstration for CCAZ members as well, because it's using technology, and particularly AI-enabled enhanced technology is really, really important, I think, because it can drive up efficiencies, it can drive compliance, it can drive quality, it can drive average handling time, it can drive customer experience. So if we leverage technology to achieve those. But I think Debbie's point, and I want you to expand on that, technology doesn't fix basic problems. Now, Debbie, you've had many, many years looking at contact centers. Why don't you speak to that just before we wrap up?
Yes, over the years, I have found that a lot of organizations come in and they think, let's throw money at technology and the technology will then drive everything, which means that organizations have to now adapt their processes, the way they do things according to the technology. I firmly believe that that's the wrong way. Your technology is the enhancement, or the enabler rather. So get your processes in place. Make sure you know what is right for your organization. Make sure that everything is mapped out according to the way it should work to ensure that efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. Then you take your technology and you build it. Even with the Corby, you don't bring Corby in and say, right, let's fit everything into it. Corby is there to say, right, what are your processes? What are you supposed to do? What are your compliance scripts? What would you like your agents to say? How many times must they say please? How many times must they use a name? What about silences? What about on hold times? Corby then comes in and it does everything according to what you've designed. So please don't try and do it the other way around. It doesn't work. Start with your foundations and build from there.
Excellent. Then no further questions, I don't think. I'm looking at the Q&A panel now.
Sorry, Rod, we
Debby.
had a question earlier from, was it Elton? I don't think we answered it. Did Elton ever come back to us?
That was to go back to the previous slide. Elton, won't you just prompt us on what it is you were looking for? Thanks for bringing it to attention. Elton, just pop it in the Q&A. While we're waiting for Elton, if you wouldn't mind just tagging in there, Timothy, do you want to do just a summary and a wrap up of today's session?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rod, for the opportunity. I think this is where we are. There were a lot of the basic questions around contact center audits. So this was sort of a direction pointing toward what we would need to do, what is involved, and also what will make up the cost of doing these contact center audits. The fact that most of these guys, I think we've got most of these that attended are members of the association. This association is there to facilitate and also to cap in terms of cost, and also to do a quality control check on how these processes are done. I know it's a very intruding process, and we just say we are here. We just be there to make sure that at least all the non-disclosure agreements are signed and adhered to. So those are some of the benefits of being a member of CCAZ. We then facilitate, then also care in terms of the cost. We also give you extensive discounts in doing this. I think also when we're doing the generation of the final cost, we just put in a discount if you're a member of CCAZ. If you're not, then that will motivate you to be a member. So I think we can directly talk to Rod and Debby in terms of the contact center audits. Then we can do a round table around it, so at least we cover as much ground. If you talk to Rod, if you talk to me, if you talk to Debby, it's one and the same thing. It'll all come up to one thing. Then we can extend this to you. So, but then we'd like to really thank you guys for the time to join in. And I think Rod is in the country on the 21st. Is more than willing to meet every one of you. So we'll try and allot the times that you can meet Rod Jones. Just talk to Aquilene, then Aquilene will put you on the diary. So for the 3 days that you're around, we can try and, I think for the Tuesday or for the Wednesday and the Thursday, it was okay. I know Friday's tricky because he has to go back because he's got another engagement in Botswana. But for as long as he's here, his door is open. You can meet him at the hotel downstairs, or we can arrange for lunch or dinner meetings.
Excellent. And my preferred brew is Zambezi. Debby, wrap up from your side.
Well, I just hope that this is going to help everybody in Zimbabwe, it's a place that's very, very dear to my heart, having grown up there. I believe that Zimbabwe has the ability. It's got the right people. It's got the right attitude. The people I've worked with in Zimbabwe, I was also lucky to do a masterclass in Zimbabwe for Rod a few years back, which was fantastic. I do believe that if we can all work together to improve the way people operate, your 40 contact centers, your 2,000 odd contact center agents, let's get them working towards that world class. Let's try and get Zimbabwe on top of it. I know that you've got the ability, so let's see what we can do to help you.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. And also from my side, just to wrap up, I'm really looking forward to being in Harare next week and to engaging with anybody who'd like to take these discussions further. We can also set up separate Zoom meetings or Teams, whichever is most applicable. One of the other things I'll be talking about during my stay in Harare is a whole new organization coming together called BPO to Africa, which is a consolidation or federation of BPO associations right across Africa. There are 20 countries participating, and CCAZ is the representation from Zimbabwe. So there's lots of BPO work potential coming into our continent, and we're happy to share that with you. Just on housekeeping, during the course of today, I will edit this a recording of this session. And produce an edited version, which I'll upload into YouTube, and I will pass that link to Timothy and his team in Harare, and so this recording will become available for you to share with your colleagues or to those who were unfortunately registered but were not able to attend today. So with that said, it's to everybody, we're right on time now, so thank you so much for attending, for your contributions. Beverly, thank you for your little insert there as well. And Leonard and Jeffries for your questions. And Timothy for hosting us today. It's been a great experience. So thank you. And I see we've got some nice clapping hands. I hope everybody's enjoyed and got value out of today. So we look forward to seeing you on the next session. Thank you.
Great. Thanks,
Okay, Rod.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rod.